Hi, and welcome to Fawns & Porter's Essex Block of the Month, featuring fabrics from Quilting Treasures. I'm your host, Jenny K. Parks. If you want to know more about me, you can check out my website, jennykquilts.com. Today, we're going to make a chain block, but all through this, I'm going to share lots of tips and tricks that I have that I learned when I was making this quilt. It's a beautiful, stunning, classic quilt, and there's lots of things that I can show you to make it easier. So, we're going to get started today with the chain block. Classic way to do this is we're going to make a simple 4-patch center. Like so. And then we're going to add these onto there. Now you absolutely, let's see, shift like this. There we go. I'm a big fan of laying stuff out because if I don't lay it out and pay attention to the layout, I can get it upside down and backwards pretty easily. So laying out helps me. It's a guide for me. So we're going to make a simple 4-patch, and then we're going to do the sides and put that all together. Now you can do it in the simple scrappy way like this, and this is a great way to do that if you're going to use a variety of different fabrics. But for this kit, I want to show you a different way to put it all together. So let me show you that real quick. A strip piecing method. If you're new to quilting and you haven't done that, it really saves a lot of time. Now let me show you. What I did here to make the center 4-patch, I did strips that are according to the measurements, because you cut a strip and then you cut down the original blocks, right? So I did a strip, 2 strips according to the measurements, and then I pieced them together. Now check this out. This is going to save you a lot of time. I put those together, I pressed to the dark, and that's going to be your theme running through all of this. And I will tell you, it's a little bit of foreshadowing here. Because of the way the quilt has to be assembled at the end, the snuggling techniques that we usually use to put a quilt together won't always work. So I'm going to take extra time and show you the different methods that I did to get the blocks to go together to make them just right. But this tip here is going to save you a lot of time. So I line these up, right, and you want to put the seams here together. And because I've pressed to the dark, they're going to snuggle in nicely. And I'm going to cut it. And when I'm cutting it here, I want to make sure that things are lined up. Hang on, I want to give myself a nice straight edge. It's not quite as straight as I would like it to be. And for this part, I'm using the lines, the grids on my mat to make sure I keep things straight, but not necessarily to count the measurements that I need. So I want to make sure I'm nice and straight as I can be. So now I'm going to cut this to the appropriate measurement for our squares. And what you do is you just continue cutting the whole line. And look at this though. It's all ready to go right to my machine and cut it, because I've got these guys snuggled in there together. So let's sew it together. There we go. If you can sew this, when you're sewing it, be sure that your seam underneath doesn't flip up as you're sewing. That's going to be something to watch out for. Okay. Now look at that guy. Ta-da! Let me press him. And one thing that's important with this, a lot of people talk about setting your seams. And what I think happens when you put that initial bit of heat on the seam itself is it makes the whole fabric more pliable and more likely to do what you want it to do. So there we have our center part. Now, for the other ones, instead of using just those little blocks, we can also chain piece that as well. And again, if you're new to quilting, I'm going to show you how we do it. So I'm going to line this one up here, and then I'm going to go to the machine and start to sew, and then I'm going to line this one up right next to it. And I like to do it as close as I can without overlapping. You don't want to overlap at all because then you cut off the block that you so carefully cut out just a little bit ago. So I'm going to put it as close as I can, and then we'll cut that apart and press them. Whoop. You only want to sew through one layer. And I usually just leave the seam allowances on stuff. Some people will cut off all the seam allowances right away. I keep them on there. I think it gives me additional information. If I need it, like if I need to find that little scrap of something, then I have that there. But it also tells me where the salvage is. It just gives me additional information, so I leave it that way. All right, I'm gonna snuggle this guy right in there. Look at that. Beautiful. So I'm using a 1/4 inch foot that has a flange on it. If your machine doesn't already have one, as a quilter, that's the first investment that you want to make. It just changes everything, makes it so much more accurate. All right, I'm going to come and cut these apart. Actually, let me cut it all off. And again, I'm just going to use the lines on my mat to help me keep right on track as a guide, but not necessarily for measurements. Using the lines on your mat for measurements, usually they're pretty reliable, but it's not, because it's stamped on there, sometimes the lines can be a little bit inaccurate. You just be aware of what you have and know how accurate your particular mat is. Next one. And you notice as I'm lining this up to cut there, I have chosen a mark on my ruler. It can be any mark, but that's straight along my stitching line. That's one more way you can be a little bit more accurate. And now we've done 2 of those, and we didn't have to cut a whole bunch of these little blocks. Now, if you're going to go totally scrappy, yeah, that's a great way to do it and a great way to put them all together. So we would just press these over and then assemble the whole block just like I showed you in the beginning. So that's it for the chain. That's it for the chain block. Our next one, we're going to talk about a sawtooth star and a triangle square. So I'm going to have some tips to show you, especially because our triangle square is pretty big. I have some tricks to make it a little bit easier for you. So be sure to tune in, and I'll see you next time. This episode of Essex Block of the Month is brought to you by Quilting Treasures. Imagine and create.